everyone, and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, I will be talking about all of the books I have read recently. So some of you might have noticed I did not post my March wrap-up, and that is because I don't really want to do monthly wrap-ups anymore. I hate filming and editing wrap-ups, but I love talking about the books I read in a month. So I have decided to put a pause on the monthly wrap-ups and just do like a recent reads type of video where I talk about the last 20 books I've read. It's not to say that I won't ever do monthly wrap-ups again. I just kind of need to change it up right now. So I'm gonna do these recent reads videos every 20 books. So after this video, I'm going to wait until I read another 20 books and then I'll do another wrap up. I feel like my wrap ups are always very repetitive and very similar, especially when I talk about 3-star reads, which is usually a majority of what I read. I just end up saying the same thing over and over again. Like, I didn't love the book, but I didn't hate it. And I kind of want to lessen that. So I'm hoping with these new recent reads videos that I will talk less about my 3, 2, and 1-star reads. I kind of want to make those very quick and just give you a quick summary, give you like 1 or 2 points on what I liked or didn't like, and then move on. I want to focus a little bit more on my 4 and 5-star reads instead. I also don't want to have to edit like a lot of footage, even though I will be talking about 20 books, which is a lot. I'm hoping it'll go by a little bit faster. I just don't want to sit here and talk about each book for 5 minutes. Since I've always done wrap-ups, I don't really know how I could change them, but like I still want to talk about all of the books I've read in a month or in a month and a half. I just feel like it's very like routine to do them every single month, and I'm kind of over that. Like I kind of want to just spread them out a little bit more. I also might film this video and edit it and hate it, and then I might go back to my regular wrap-ups, but I am desperate for change on my channel. I really just want to change a lot of things. I don't enjoy constantly making the same videos that I've always made. So I feel like this will be like a fresh little change. It's nothing super major, but it is something that I feel like will help my creativity a little bit. So I guess let's get into this recent reads wrap-up video. I'm still gonna go in order of everything that I read since the beginning of March. I don't know, my reading was kind of all over the place. I still don't have a 5-star read, which sucks. I can't believe like we're in April and I haven't read a single 5-star read. Actually, I do have a 5-star read, but that was a reread, so I don't really count that. The first book I read was a Takeover by T.L. Swan. This is the second book in the Miles High Club series. This I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. It follows Claire, who's a single mom, and she is currently running her late husband's company, but it's struggling, and our male character offers to buy out the company and help her, but she wants nothing to do with him, and they have this intense attraction to each other. This was really good. I did not expect to love this that much. This was the book that you guys picked for me to read in my Pick What I Read video, the first video that I did. You guys wanted me to read the first book and the second book, and I accidentally read the second book first. I didn't realize this was the second book until I was like halfway through. This was just a very sweet and emotional and funny read. I love how we just jumped straight into the story. There was no like build up or leading up to the characters meeting. It was like right away we were into the story. I also love how like slow this book was in certain aspects, especially with like Claire and Tristan's relationship. I just really enjoyed this. I thought it was really good and definitely one of my favorite books of the year so far. Then I read the Stopover by T.L. Swan. This is the first book in the Miles High Club series. This I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This follows Jameson and Emily, who kind of have like a one-night stand, and a year later Emily gets this job, and it turns out that her new boss is Jameson. I still wanted to read this first book, so I went ahead and read it, and I didn't love it as much as the second book. I feel like this one specifically was definitely driven by sex scenes. The characters would fight and then have sex and like it would all be fixed. So it just felt very repetitive. I didn't feel emotionally connected to any of the characters, and the romance was just kind of bland for me. Then we move on to Taste by Melanie Harlow. This is the 7th book in the Cloverleaf Farm series, and this I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and I didn't love it as much as I had hoped. This follows Gianni and Ellie, who have hated each other ever since they were kids, and they are now 23 years old. They still do not get along, but Ellie is supposed to go for this business event, and there's supposed to be like this big storm. So Gianni decides to kind of tag along, and they end up getting trapped in this hotel room for a couple of days during a blizzard. This book was fun, and there were definitely some very sweet and cute moments, but I will say the characters definitely acted their age. They were a little immature. They definitely acted like some young 23-year-olds. I feel like they didn't communicate that well either, especially towards the end. They just could not fess up their feelings for each other. I did like their banter and them always like referencing their childhood. I did think like the whole restaurant business stuff was a little interesting, but it was just another mediocre romance. And then I read Logan by Jay McLean. This is the 2nd book in the Preston Brothers series. This I gave 4 out of 5 stars. The summary for all these books in the series are like extremely vague, so I don't want to give too much detail, but this obviously follows Logan, who is a high school dropout. He is now 19, and he is kind of known as the local stoner, and he is just dealing with a lot of secrets, and he is going through a lot, but he ends up meeting this one girl who really intrigues him. This book deals a lot with addiction, and I feel like that was very realistic throughout this book. I feel like there was a lot of back and forth in here, and I also have to like remember that these characters are like 19, like they're super young, so it does make sense that they don't really know what they want, and everything is just very confusing, especially when you're dealing with an addict. I love the Preston family so much. I love seeing all of their little scenes, and I especially love seeing Cam and Lucy in here. I feel like there's so much that happens in here that it's like hard to remember every single thing. Aubrey was a very interesting character. Like, she was very young, but she had kind of her life together. Like, she was living on her own and like running her own business because she had like inheritance money. I don't know, the romance wasn't as impactful for me. I'm being super vague because I don't want to spoil anything. Just know that this book could be triggering, and it is very emotional and very serious, and I liked it, but there were definitely some things missing for me, and I don't know what that is. Then I read Leo by Jay McLean. This is the 3rd book in the Preston Brothers series. This I also gave 4 out of 5 stars. This follows Leo, who has always kind of struggled to find his voice in his big family. He has always been an observer. He's listened and watched, and everything changes when he meets Mia. I did enjoy this, but it definitely was way too long. This is a very long book, and it honestly did not need to be that long. Also, the writing is like tiny. The writing is so small. Again, so much happens in here, it's hard to remember everything. There's lots of back and forth in this one as well, but I understand the characters are really young. This book started like in the present, and then it kind of went into flashbacks. So you saw their entire friendship leading up to their like relationship and then to the present. And while I was reading those flashbacks, I couldn't help but want to just be in the present. This also deals with very serious topics, and it was emotional. I definitely cried at some scenes in here. There was also a plot that I didn't really see coming, but I really enjoyed that plot. I feel like this book is also kind of the definition of like right person, wrong time. Leo and Mia like literally loved each other for like 10 years, which is crazy, especially because they were so young. I did love the ending of this book. This book had a lot of ups and downs, but overall, I really enjoyed it. I don't know if this is my favorite book in the series. I think it is, to be honest. Then I read Protecting You by Claire Kingsley. This is the first book in the Bailey Brothers series. This I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This is kind of like a novella slash like short story. I honestly would say it's like a prequel to the series. This follows Grace and Asher, who were best friends when they were kids, but going to college kind of forced them apart. However, they are both back home for the summer and everything changes with a kiss. I did love the overall vibe of the book, and I liked getting to see all of the characters and like kind of getting introduced to all of them. And I just loved like the overall small town vibes and everything, and like this little rivalry with another family. It does end on a cliffhanger, which I honestly did not expect for some reason. Like I just didn't think it was gonna end that way. So then I did read the second book, which is Fighting for Us. This I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. This continues Grace and Asher's story. It essentially picks up 7 years later after the end of the first book. Again, I liked the small town vibes. I liked the characters. I liked the whole family. I just felt like this book was kind of the same thing over and over again. Asher just kind of acted the same the whole time. He would push Grace away and then he would pull her back in and then push her away again. I did occasionally get annoyed or bored with the brothers. Logan is definitely like my least favorite brother. I do not care about him. I just find him really annoying and obnoxious, and I don't really care. I honestly haven't continued this series, but I kind of want to skip his book already. Like, I'm not interested. The whole mystery surrounding like the rival family is actually very interesting, and that's why I'm probably not going to skip Logan's book. But this book overall was very emotional, and it felt like a very heartfelt romance. Then I read Unraveling Him by Claire Kingsley. This is the third book in the Bailey Brothers series, and this one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this one. So this follows Fiona, who decides to quit her job after being poorly treated by her dad and her best friend, and go on a road trip to go see her mom. However, she gets into some car trouble that leads her to Evan Bailey, who is a grumpy custom car builder who hates her father. Fiona and Evan were complete opposites. This is definitely a grumpy sunshine romance. They're both into cars. Fiona actually worked for her dad, who was like this car person, and she would like help find old cars for people to like rebuild, and she would like help find parts and stuff. So she has like a lot of connections. And at one point, Evan was a client of her father's, but he kind of ended up screwing him over, so he does not like her dad. Fiona is nothing like her dad. She's a sweetheart who has a lot of plants and who constantly talks to her plants. She always just sees like the good in people, and she always wants to help people. There was like a little bit of a mystery element to this book, which I really enjoyed, and the mystery with the rival family also continued, which was very interesting. And I love when Fiona like met Evan's family, and his grandmother like immediately had a nickname for her. It was just very cute, very sweet, and I loved the ending of this book and the way that like Evan proposed. It was just adorable. I really, really enjoyed this book. Then I read Binding 13 by Chloe Walsh. This is the first book in the Boys of Tommen series. This I gave 3 out of 5 stars. It's like almost a 4. There were things I really loved about this book, and then there were things I didn't really like. This is like a high school new adult romance, and it follows Shannon, who moves to a new school like mid-year because she was bullied in her old school. She is just so desperate for a fresh start. She really just wants to feel safe and happy, and she ends up meeting Johnny, who is the school's rising rugby star, and Shannon just kind of wants to stay in her own lane and not draw any attention, but Johnny can't seem to forget about her, and he is determined to protect her. This was a very intense and heartbreaking story. I loved the characters, especially like Shannon and Johnny. I loved them. It was very cute and very sweet. Their relationship was so innocent but super heartwarming and beautiful. This is definitely like a very slow burn It's a very, very long book. That is one of my complaints about this book, is that it was so long, and it definitely did not need to be. But I understand that the author really wanted you to get to know the characters and to be in their lives. Shannon and Johnny become really good friends, and they just build this like wonderful friendship that obviously eventually blooms into something way more serious. I will say also the side characters did occasionally annoy me. I did like them, but Gibbsy, who is Johnny's best friend, did sometimes annoy me just because he was always like constantly like trying to make jokes and constantly trying to be funny, and it just felt like he was trying too hard sometimes. But like, I understand he was like the comedy relief in this very serious story. This is definitely like boy falls first, boy obsessed. Like, Johnny was so in love with Shannon, like from literally day one. He just didn't want to scare her away or like hurt her in any way, so he was like super protective and sweet. I loved the ending, like especially with Johnny's confession at the end. That was super funny and cute. This book does end on a cliffhanger, which I honestly did not see coming. I thought the second book was about like a different couple. This book does deal with abuse and some like mental health issues, and there's also a lot of mention of like drugs and stuff. So it is a little bit of a heavier new adult high school romance, but I did really enjoy it. And then I obviously read the second book, which is Keeping 13. This one I also gave 3 out of 5 stars. This, like I said, continues Johnny and Shannon's story. It pretty much picks up right after the end of the first book. Johnny is kind of struggling to keep his rugby dream alive, and Shannon is dealing with a lot of family stuff. A lot of her secrets have been exposed, so she is kind of dealing with the aftermath of that. I did enjoy this book more than the first book. Shannon and Johnny definitely grew as characters. You saw them really develop and be more grown up, I guess. They both have dealt with some serious things, and you see them change from that. And Johnny and Shannon were both like super awkward with each other, but like cute. And it was very like funny. Johnny is so careful, and he is so gentle with Shannon. He like doesn't want to hurt her in any way, and it was just so adorable and sweet. Like, he truly respects her and just says like the sweetest things. I loved their friendship and their development into like a romantic relationship. It was just so perfect the way that that happened. I also really loved Johnny's parents. His mom and dad were just perfect. I loved them. They were also hilarious. The friend group didn't annoy me as much in the second book, I think because everything was kind of exposed, and so there were a lot more serious conversations, and it wasn't just like, oh, let's joke around and have fun. It was like, oh, we're dealing with some serious things now. I also liked the relationship with Johnny's mom and Shannon. They developed this really nice, almost like mother-daughter relationship, which I really liked. I thought that was very sweet. I don't want to spoil anything, but the whole scene where Johnny like goes to her house and like sees her siblings, like her brothers, and what he does after, like I just loved that whole scene. It was so funny and cute. I don't know, now I'm thinking about it, I'm like, maybe I should have given this book 4 stars as well, but again, it was so long and it didn't need to be long, but I really, really enjoyed the second book, and I loved reading about Johnny and Shannon. Then I read Believe Me by Tahira Mafi. This is book 6.5 in the Shatter Me series. This I gave 2 out of 5 stars. This picks up like 2 weeks after Imagine Me. Warner and Julia are just trying to plan their future together, but things keep getting in the way. This was just a little boring. I don't know if I wasn't in the mood for it or if I just actually didn't really care. This was in Warner's POV, which I did enjoy. There was also 2 sex scenes in here, and they were like pretty descriptive, which I did not expect, especially because this is like 180 pages. I didn't think that there would be like 2 sex scenes. Yeah, Kenji kind of annoyed me in here, and I don't know, everybody else just kind of annoyed me because they were all kind of mean to Warner. Him and Juliet just went through a lot in the last book, and he obviously was still dealing with a lot of that trauma. I genuinely feel like there was not enough scenes of Warner and Juliet together. Like, you didn't get to see them say I do or call each other like husband and wife. Like, you just didn't really get to see any of that, so I just feel like this was pointless. Like, there was literally no point. Then I was honestly really desperate for a 5-star read. I just feel like nothing was satisfying me, so I went ahead and read the Monster in His Eyes trilogy by J.M. Darhauer. This is one of my favorite trilogies of all time. I absolutely love these books. I first read these books back in 2018, and I haven't read them since then. It was definitely time for a reread, and I did give them all 5 stars. The first book is Monster in His Eyes, the second book is Torture to Her Soul, and then the third book is Target on Our Backs. This follows Carissa, who is a college student, and one day she ends up forgetting her phone in class, so she goes back to go get her phone, and she overhears a conversation between her professor and this very mysterious, handsome man. This mysterious man named Ignacio is immediately intrigued by Carissa, and he essentially takes her on this whirlwind romance, but he's a mysterious guy. He has a lot of dark secrets. I was just really in the mood to reread this series, and I'm so happy I did it. The first book is actually in Carissa's point of view, and then the second book is in Naz's point of view, and then the third book is in both of their point of views, which I actually really enjoyed. I like how it kind of mixed it up. And reading this for a second time, there were just so many scenes where I was like, oh my god, Naz is so funny. He's unironically kind of funny, but dark funny. Obviously I don't want to spoil things, but there's this scene where Naz essentially kills somebody, and he doesn't have time to deal with the body, so he literally puts it in the trunk. And he goes to this dinner party with Carissa, and they both just have a nice time, but he literally has a dead body in the trunk of his car. And then Naz's relationship with his parents. I also found it very funny, his relationship with his dad, especially to get his first criminal record. I thought that was really funny. Even though these books are very serious and dramatic and very intense and very dark, there was some funny moments, and I don't know why, but the funny moments just really stuck out to me this time around. The romance in here is so intoxicating, and you see Naz being kind of obsessed with Carissa, he would do anything for her, but he obviously has his own reasons for that as well. Carissa is very naive and innocent, but she also doesn't question things enough. And I just feel the mystery element in here is so gripping and interesting. I just really love these kinds of dark romances where the female character has no idea what's going on and she's so oblivious to everything, and the male character is just so dark and dangerous. There's just something so captivating about that for me, and I really, really love this series. Then I read A Baby for the Boss by Jessica Cain. This is a quick little erotica novella. This I gave 1 star. I did not like it. This follows our female character who is very young and naive, but super successful. She's running her family's business, and she is currently desperate for a family of her own. She really wants to have a baby. And while at work, she sees this very attractive employee, and she basically asks him if he would be willing to help her get a baby. I enjoyed this until the whole daddy kink thing came in. That is not my thing whatsoever. I hate when that is in books. Also, it was just a little over the top, even though I am used to that when it comes to Jessica Cain. This one just felt especially over the top, and by the end of it, I was just really over it. Then I read Sweet Thing by Renee Carlino. This I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I did actually vlog me reading this, so I will link that video down below if you want to know more of my thoughts. This just follows Mia, who goes to New York City after her father passes away. She is going to kind of pick up his life and run his cafe and basically put his belongings away. And she ends up meeting Will, who is a struggling musician, and he becomes her roommate. This was a beautiful story about grief and about figuring out your life, and that things don't always go to plan, and that sometimes you have to accept that. I loved the friends to lovers element in here. Mia and Will were great characters. This was also at times a very slow burn. It took Mia and Will, especially Mia, a really long time to figure out her feelings for Will and to finally accept them. Whenever Mia was reminiscing on her father and mourning his loss, I definitely teared up. It was a very emotional read. I just really enjoyed this book, and it is one of my favorites of the year. It was really, really good. Then I read Sweet Little Thing by Renee Carlino. This I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This is a little novella. It picks up right after the end of Sweet Thing. This is in Will's POV, and it's essentially just like an extra little epilogue, an extra little short story, and it just wraps up Will and Mia's story perfectly. I loved this. It was so cute and sweet, and it was nice to see Mia and Will be super domestic. I really enjoyed this novella, and it added just a perfect ending to their beautiful story. Then I read The Air He Breathes by Brittany C. Cherry. This I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I also vlogged while I was reading this. It's in the same vlog as Sweet Thing. This follows Tristan and Elizabeth, who have both suffered great loss in their life. They have both lost loved ones. They both become neighbors, and they find it easier to grieve about their losses together. This was a very emotional and heavy romance. I liked the characters, I just didn't feel any emotional attachment to them, and I didn't feel their love for each other, if that makes sense. Like, I just didn't feel like the romance was that intense or dramatic. Elizabeth is a single mom, which I did enjoy that aspect. I thought she was like a really good mom. There was also kind of this mystery element in here towards the end, which I didn't really necessarily like, but I understand like it kind of added that conflict. This was just very like mediocre for me, which sucks because I expected to really, really love this book. Like, this was in my 5-star predictions video. I thought I was going to absolutely love this book, but I just didn't connect. I just didn't love the characters or their romance. I just found it very bland. There wasn't anything that really stood out to me from this book. Then I read The Fire Between High and Low by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the second book in the Element series, and this I gave 3 out of 5 stars. This follows Logan and Alyssa, who are complete opposites, but somehow they become best friends, and they both are dealing with a lot of family issues and difficult home lives, and they continue to lean on each other, which makes them realize that they may have more feelings for each other than just friendship. This book does deal with drug addiction and abuse, so it's pretty heavy. I just didn't love the romance in here, and I feel like the first half of the book I wasn't really into. The second half I also wasn't that much of a fan of, but I appreciate like the direction it went in, to be honest, because like the beginning is so sad and it's so heavy, and then the second part is also really sad because of other things, but it felt more uplifting. I will say all of the drug elements in here and like addiction felt very realistic, and that I feel like was done really well. I didn't love the characters or the romance, but I really enjoyed the ending, and I will say I enjoyed Alyssa and Logan's relationship with their siblings, because their siblings are also dating. So I really liked them kind of having this like little family. Other than that, again, this was just very, not basic, because there were things about it that I felt like were very different, but I just didn't love anything about it. And then the last book I have to talk about for this recent reads wrap up is The Silent Waters by Brittany C. Cherry. This is the third book in the Element series. This one I gave 4 out of 5 stars, but I'm kind of confused if I want to give it 4 or if I want to give it 3. This follows Maggie, who experiences something very traumatic when she's 10 years old, and she ends up suffering from severe PTSD, which leads to her becoming mute and never leaving her house. However, she finds peace and hope in her brother's best friend, Brooks. I did love the romance and I loved the characters. I just feel like there was something lacking for me, and I'm not exactly sure what it is. I really loved the beginning of this book, seeing Maggie when she's 10 and seeing her like be super in love with Brooks, and then the traumatic event happens which completely changes Maggie. You see Brooks become like a very protective and softer person, which I liked, and then they just continue to have like this really important friendship. I just feel like Maggie didn't try enough to change, and like she didn't try enough to overcome her trauma, and I feel like a lot of times she let the trauma win, and she let that experience win over her. I understand like dealing with something very traumatic, there's no right or wrong way to deal with it, and however you deal with it is just how you deal with it. There was mention that Maggie did try to go to therapy, and like therapists would come to her house and she would be homeschooled. It wasn't like they didn't try, I just feel like they gave up too soon. I also don't really enjoy like the separation time. There was kind of a moment where Brooks goes off with his band. He's in a band and they become kind of successful. I also will say, like, her stepmom really annoyed me, but I also understood where she was coming from. And I like how Maggie built up a better relationship with, like, her stepsister. That was really nice to see throughout the book. I loved her relationship with her dad. That was very sweet. And I did love all the scenes, like, towards the end, where things kind of develop and change. I really loved those scenes, but I will say this book did suffer a little bit from the whole love saves everything, love fixes everything, and there was no real resolution to her trauma. I did really enjoy the ending of this book though. It was very sweet and very cute. But yeah, I'm very mixed on how I feel about this book because I really liked it, but it just wasn't that memorable. I think I expected to like give it 5 stars, and I'm like stuck in between a 3 and a 4. I have a feeling this wrap up is going to be very long, and that was not my intention, but those were all 20 books that I've read recently. Let me know what books you've been reading recently. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, follow me on all my other social media, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.